Somewhere in the dry heat of northern Australia, a bird is rearranging gravel. It has been at this for hours. It picks up a single gray stone, considers it, walks 4 steps, sets it down, then backs away and tilts its head, studying the stone the way an interior designer studies a lamp. This is not a nest. No egg will ever touch this place. This is a stage, and the bird is the set designer, the lighting department, and the lead actor, all at once. This is the great Bowerbird, and it independently invented a trick that human filmmakers needed cameras to discover. The great Bowerbird, Clemidera nucalis, is roughly the size of a small crow, which tracks because it is essentially a crow that went to art school. Gray-brown, forgettable. The kind of bird you would walk past in a parking lot without a second look. There is exactly one flash of color, a small lilac crest on the back of the neck, and most of the time you cannot even see it. By every shortcut we use to rank a bird, drab feathers, no real song, no dramatic size, the great Bowerbird is nothing, which is precisely the problem it has spent millions of years solving. Because the great Bowerbird does not win by being beautiful, it wins by building. The work takes most of the year. 2 parallel walls of woven sticks, forming an avenue just wide enough to stand inside. At each open end, a court, a carefully laid carpet of objects. Gray stones, white bones, bleached shells, bits of glass, anything pale and hard and collectible. A single bower can hold thousands of these, gathered one at a time, carried in the beak, and set down on purpose. And here most people assume the story ends. Cute bird, makes a pile, decorates it. We have all seen a magpie hoard shiny things. It does not end there. It barely begins there. In 2012, 2 researchers, Laura Kelly and John Endler, published a study in the journal Science. They had been measuring bowers, the size of every object on every court and exactly where it sat relative to the avenue. And they found something that should not be possible coming from a bird. The objects are not placed at random. They are sorted by size. The smallest sit closest to the avenue, right where the visiting female stands. The largest site farthest away. The size grows smoothly, gradually, the further you get from the audience. If you have ever taken a photograph, the hair on your neck may already be standing up, because that is forced perspective. That is the exact technique a film crew uses to make a normal actor look like a giant, or a tabletop model look like a real city. By arranging objects so they grow with distance, the Bowerbird flattens the viewer's sense of depth. The court looks more even, more regular than it truly is. And against that controlled, illusory backdrop, the bird at the avenue, holding a brightly colored trinket in the beak, appears larger and more vivid than it actually is. This is not decorating. This is engineering a stage set with corrected perspective, calibrated to a single viewing angle, the exact line of sight of the one spectator it is trying to impress. And it gets worse. The illusion is not a fluke, and it is not the same from bird to bird. Males that built better illusions, smoother gradients, more convincing depth, had measurably higher mating success. The females could tell the difference. They were, in effect, judging the quality of the special effects. And when the researchers sneaked in and scrambled the size gradient, the males noticed within days and rebuilt it. Reset the trick. Restored the lie. Again and again. Because to a great Bowerbird, a broken illusion is an emergency. Now sit with how strange this is. A plain brown bird in the outback, with a brain the size of a marble, has independently arrived at a principle of optics that took our species until the Renaissance to formally understand, and until Hollywood to fully weaponize. Nobody taught it. There is no Bowerbird film school. The whole behavior is built, refined, and graded entirely by evolution. Females who preferred the better illusion left more offspring. Males who built the better illusion passed on whatever finely tuned instinct produces it. Run that loop for a few 100,000 generations, and you get a wild animal performing a visual deception so precise, we have to borrow the vocabulary of cinematography just to describe it. And to be fair, it is also kind of a con artist. The entire apparatus exists to make one bird look bigger and better than it is. It steals decorations from rival bowers. It will slip over and trash a neighbor's court out of pure competitive spite. This is a creature that turned the dating profile into an architectural arms race, sabotage included. Conservation footnote: no drama. The great bowerbird is common across northern Australia and not threatened, which means this absurd little theater is still running today, in the heat and the dust, every single year. There is something almost unbearably relatable about it. A plain individual, unremarkable by every obvious measure, who cannot dazzle with looks or voice, and so instead learns to build. Learns to arrange the world just so. Learns that if you control the angle and the light and exactly what the audience sees and in what order, you can make ordinary look like magnificent. The great bowerbird is not beautiful. It simply figured out, long before we did, that beauty is a thing you can construct. This was dumb, stupid birds. The birds are dumb. The birds are stupid. The birds are also, every last one of them, quietly running an operation far cleverer than they have any right to. If you enjoyed this, follow along for the next one, and try to look at the pigeons outside a little differently.